realized it's always known I was going to be an attorney. The only other thing I thought about and entertained an idea throughout my whole growing up was maybe I'd be a teacher. And I thought about it this way: how many people would I be able to help? Well, if I'm a teacher, I can only help, Orange County Public Schools in the 80s, 90s, whatever, 30 kids at a time, right? So I'd only be able to help 30 kids every year if I was a teacher. Well, I can help more people being an attorney than 30 people per year. That's honestly how I've made my final choice. Well, what I do now is, I think the best combination between being an attorney and being a teacher, because a huge portion of what I do is to teach people about the Constitution, teach them about the law, teach them about government, what government's allowed to do, what it's not allowed to do, where our rights come from, what everybody can do, as a school bus driver or a stay-at-home mom or a doctor or another lawyer. We all can do something, and we all have to do something. So, thank you very much, by the way. I started, working on, I told one of my professors when I was in law school, I'm going to be a family law attorney. I'm going to do custody and parenting time and divorce stuff, and I'm going to help people when they're at the worst part of their lives. And she said, well, you're not going to stick that, with that forever. That'd be your sole thing. I could have stuck with that, but I guess I kind of figured our freedom in general was a little bit more important. And a broader spectrum that I can help people on. But I ended up, opening my own practice, going on 20 years ago. And I practiced in Minnesota first, and then Michigan, and licensed in federal courts and the United States Supreme Court, in a tribal court in Michigan. Not licensed here in Florida. That's a lot of money, a lot of time. I would put in the time. So if you know people that want me to really be able to do some damage down here in Florida, somebody wants to pay for all the bar expense stuff, I'll take it. I passed every bar I've ever taken on the first try. So it's a good bet. But I do what I do for free every day. So my husband's not an attorney, he's a machinist. Thankfully, that means no student loans for him, but mine only get bigger. One of the perks of doing public service work. So anyway, by the time COVID started, I was doing a bunch of different things. I was a restorative justice facilitator. I had my own law practice. I had run for state rep. At this point, 7 years ago, or something like that. I was fairly politically active. I did a lot of mediation. Ironically, I can be the best, most fierce advocate for a good cause than nobody's ever seen. I mean, I really pity the person that underestimates me, especially in a courtroom. But the irony is that I'm actually maybe even a better mediator and a neutral third party, a facilitator of peaceful resolution than I am an attorney. I've been a mediator longer than I've been an attorney. And so I've mediated thousands of cases, and I've stopped doing stats years ago. I stopped doing mediations every day, but somewhere around 94% of all the cases I ever do, whether it's divorce or child protection or adult guardianship or contracts, no fault insurance, you name it, I've been able to help people reach peaceful resolution. So I try to employ the skills on both sides to try to help everybody come together and do what we need to do to restore freedom. Of course, I don't wear the shirt, but really felt called wear my blood shirt. My favorite color. One of the good things that Walmart actually has. But anyway, so there's so much that I can share with you, but let me put it this way: in early part of 2020, I was already working for the general freedom cause. I'd already worked on several amicus briefs at the United States Supreme Court level. I think the very first one I worked on was the state of Hawaii was suing Trump for, I don't even remember what it was anymore, except for something stupid. And so that was 2016, 2017. It was right at the beginning. And so anyway, that was my first, go at the United States Supreme Court work. And there's several other cases that I have had a hand working on since then. I'm a member of, have any of you heard of Physicians for Informed Consent, a nationwide organization? I've been a member of that organization. I'm not a physician, but I've been a member of that group for years. I don't even know what year I joined. So I get their emails and, whatever. I'm also a member of Michigan for Vaccine Choice. Not against vaccines, but for the choice of what you put into your own body, your children's bodies. And that organization I became a member of in running for state rep. I didn't even think of medical freedom as a issue at that point. There's so many things that I didn't realize. Then again, when my kid number 3, who's now 18, almost 19, was her age, there were a lot less things they tried to inject into us. So crazy to think about. But anyway, so being a member of Michigan for Vaccine Choice, they have, a Facebook page and group and all this other stuff. And so I started seeing some of these people they're big in the freedom fight and in Michigan anyway. And they were going through like real life situations relating to their job or relating to custody situation, divorce or whatever. And so this one particular case, this woman named Lori, not the Lori that you've been talking to, but this woman named Lori, this little girl, and she had sole custody, but dad just kept trying to bring her to court to force a bunch of immunizations. He was actually requesting that all childhood immunizations from 0 to 4 be given to this 4-year-old immunocompromised child all at the same time to get her all caught up. And so she wanted me to represent her, and I said, well, I'm really not comfortable with that. I've only been working as part of, a Christian-based organization, a nonprofit doing these kind of briefs. I'm way in over my head, but I can come in as an amicus if there's an organization that wants to basically put their name on the work that I'm doing. And Physicians for Informed Consent got involved that way. That's cool. I remember. So this was February 2020. I actually had to teach myself how to do appellate work. I had never filed my own, how do you literally, what does a brief look like? What has to be in a brief? Because an appellate brief is different than a trial brief, totally different. So, and all the attorneys that were out there, even the attorneys in the organization, the Christian organization that I was working with, they weren't helping me through that. I literally had to teach myself, someone who's done trial work for a lot of years, how to do an appeal. So in 3 weeks' time, I figured out how to do that. I wrote this brief, but the issue that I was coming in on was medical freedom, especially in the context of vaccination and our rights as parents to make those decisions for our own kids. Anybody here see the God move in that? That was February 2020. And then less than a month after I filed that brief, then the governor of Michigan shuts down the entire state, and it's been crazy town ever since. So, I look back, I get chills right now thinking about some of these things, how God prepares you for things, and you don't see what he's doing in that moment. And I'm like, dang, now I know how to do a brief. So I started doing several amicus briefs that year in the Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court. I don't have paid staff, and it's just me and whatever my husband. See that? Yeah, he already left. Coming back in, but anyway, so it's my resources are limited, and you've probably heard of things like LexisNexis or Westlaw or some legal tools that attorneys use. I don't have money for that. I've been doing public service work for my whole career. I used to be a public defender in 2 different states. I just don't have those resources, so I do everything by hand. And anyway, so I didn't feel like I could really take on cases literally that would call me, see me at events and want me to do something specifically for them. So I participated in every amicus brief that I could. I don't even know the number that I filed in 2020. But I was blessed to be given a rare opportunity as amicus counsel to argue my position in front of the Michigan Supreme Court against the governor's orders, the executive orders. And unless you've been under a rock, you probably know that the Michigan Supreme Court did agree that what the governor was doing was wrong, she was violating one statute and the other statute was totally unconstitutional. I was the only attorney, though, that raised the point, okay, so she's going to continue doing this. She's just going to start using the public health code to do it now. You need to make it clear, just make the decision clear once and for all. Don't take these shortcuts. Do your job so we have peace. People know they don't have to follow it. Of course, the Supreme Court chose not to address that. And lo and behold, by the end of that month, October 2020, she had literally pulled every single provision of the older executive orders that came under one statute, and now is doing them through Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and that statute, the Public Health Code. And I'm like, I've been telling you guys this for a month. And that was in 2020 that I was saying that. So anyway, it's still an uphill battle. There's a case right now that's working its way up to the Michigan Supreme Court where the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the AG's office, they're trying to get the courts to overturn that decision and say, of course you can have a blank check to do whatever you want as MDHHS or the governor's office directly or whatever. So I'm planning on writing an amicus brief on that soon. But anyway, I had written a constitutional amendment petition. I've been doing, I hate social media, just FYI. I've never done a live, Facebook Live or anything like that before COVID started. Never spoke in front of a huge crowd before, even as an attorney. I mean, doing a trial, most of my stuff's not like an O.J. Simpson trial, like the whole world's watching, right? Small potatoes. So my first experience speaking in front of a large crowd was April 30th, 2020, when I stood on the steps of the Capitol and told people 22 minutes worth of information about COVID, the medical side, as well as the legal side and the constitutional side. And despite talking for that long, I was surprised to find out that people would come up to me afterwards. When are you getting back up there? When are you going to, talk more on this? And I'm like, what? You know how long it took me to prepare that? 22 minutes? Like, no, I don't have anything left of me. But found myself then inside of the Capitol where we were storming the Capitol. You've heard of that, right? And you guys, know who Deborah Birx is? The scarf lady with Fauci. That evening, so Gretchen Whitmer had been doing her, at that point it was like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday newscast or whatever, broadcasting she would do in the evenings to do the COVID updates, right? Well, she made sure to do one that night to say how horrible we were. In my picture, I was the one that was on the podium on the steps of the Capitol when she has that in her background, the sound off, of course, but talking about how this is a super spreader event and we're all horrible and we're going to kill people from being there without masks. And sure enough, the same night, Deborah Birx did the same thing, had my presence behind her like on a TV screen, talking about how, we're all going to kill everybody in Michigan if we're there together in person. That was a bit. So anyway, needless to say, Gretchen Whitmer and Attorney General Dana Nessel, even Secretary of State Benson, they're not really good friends of mine, but they really do know who I am. So if you ever get a chance to be in the same room with them, just casually mention or the constitutional attorney Katherine, just like that. I mean, like come up, like share, one name only. I just love to see. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I regularly challenged her in 2020 to debate me on the steps of the Capitol. Either one of them, because Gretchen's an attorney, and so is the AG. And I said, one of the two of you show up to the steps of the Capitol and we'll debate the orders, the constitutionality, the legality, anything about what you're doing. And it took me up on it. But so with the petition, I was, and have any of you ever been involved in petitions for, I'm trying to remember which one. I think Florida does, you can do a constitutional amendment petition, but you cannot do a petition to get a new law on the books. Is that right? It's one but not the other here, which I find strange. But anyway, you guys at least have known people that are circulating petitions, and it's a whole big thing
to get on the ballot in Michigan for a constitutional amendment, you need just under 500,000 signatures. And in 2020, when the whole state was shut down, that's kind of hard. It usually takes a lot of planning, years, and fundraising, just like, being a candidate, right? It's a lot of fundraising, and it takes tons of people, and you have to have the structure in place. So, no joke, God likes to give me good ideas when I'm shampooing my hair, because I guess it's funny for him because I can't write it down, and I gotta really try to remember it by the time, I'm out of the shower. Okay, what was that? But one day, washing my hair, God said to me, "You're going to write a constitutional amendment, a petition to change the Michigan Constitution and get rid of all this stuff." And I was like, that can't even happen. I went downstairs and I researched it, and I know it was possible. And I was like, okay. So from that moment until the time I researched all the requirements, which Michigan law is like pretty much law in every state. It's overly cumbersome and confusing and a bunch of garbage. But when I navigated all that process and drafted it and revised it and found a printer and had the first, 50,000 copies of the petition sheets printed, any guess, somebody give me a guess, how long you think that might be start to finish to do that crap work?
Month.
That would be like an insane feat to do. I did it in 7 days. That was not me, obviously. I mean, I'm kind of cool, but I'm not that cool. That was a God thing. And we didn't end up getting on the ballot, partially because of the targeting of things that happened on Election Day 2020, when I was violently arrested, not just arrested, violently arrested for being on township property as the attorney for the two circulators who were there that day. I'm not even there circulating my own petition. I was responding to the scene to talk with the sheriff's deputy that I had been on the phone with. He seemed very ignorant of the law, and I was trying to give him every benefit of the doubt. I mean, I'm a thin blue line, shirt wearing kind of person. I've had flags on my car, with the red line and the blue line and whatever, right? I mean, I like to support the people that are there to serve and protect us. So giving him every benefit of the doubt, I said, we're not resolving this over the phone. I will come to you. I'll bring it in person. I'll bring the statute so you can read it. We're looking at the same thing. I'm also hard of hearing, so I thought maybe I'm just not hearing something correctly. I get there. He refuses to talk about the law with me. That was the only reason why I was going. Refused to talk about the law, and then went from threatening the two circulators with arrest for trespassing on publicly owned, publicly accessible property during business hours in a way that did not infringe or interfere with anybody else's rights to use that property in any way. He went from threatening them with that arrest to threatening me. And that little person was in the car and saw the whole thing. She was 6 years old. And needless to say, it was a very traumatizing experience. And there were so many lessons came out of it. The one thing that kept me, they were going to bring me to jail. They told me they were going to have CPS come and take my daughter. They told me they were towing my car. They wouldn't let my husband, they kept being smart asses. Well, where's your husband? You have me beat up at this point in handcuffs in the back of this SUV. You're holding my phone. My husband's picture shows up if he calls. It says Mike Henry. My name was on my shirt, Restore Freedom with Katherine Henry. Couldn't you just answer it and tell him what's going on, and then he'll tell you when he's coming? No, they refused to do that. So, I mean, they violated so many laws. It's just, and that was just the beginning. This case literally took over 20 months. I literally just this month finally got it dismissed. We had 8 trial dates. There were thousands of pieces of paper filed in this thing. 2 district court trial level judges, a circuit court judge, court of appeals, 5 different prosecuting attorneys, all violated my rights at every stage along the way. Refusing the ADA accommodation that had already been approved. Refusing to let me have assistance of counsel, to have any attorney in the courtroom with me when we would have hearings. Just so you know, that's kind of a no-no. Even if you're an attorney, you still have the right to counsel. Refusing to allow a single other human being in the courtroom with me. I wasn't allowed to have the public present. Well, that's kind of a constitutional requirement, and it's a specific state statute that's been in play in Michigan since 1846. So it's not like they can claim there's something new and they didn't figure it out and they don't know if it applies. No, it applies, even during COVID.
I would just like to say, I have read hundreds upon hundreds of legal motions. They are boring as hell. I read the motion she's talking about. It was absolute poetry. I have never read a better put together legal motion in my life. It was beautiful. It was something I would read to my child as a bedtime story. It was beautiful.
Well, before I kind of forget some pieces here, my sole purpose right now, like I said, is to restore freedom and to educate people and give everyone tools. My website, we used to have, a full tech team as COVID started and we were doing this petition and all these other things. We had this whole group of volunteers. We had thousands of volunteers all across the state somehow. But now, even the core team has, to somewhat degree, disbanded. We don't have daily meetings, and they're not there to help me, week in and week out, because they each are starting their own things, which is great. But so I do all the coding and the writing for my own website now. That's kind of scary. I don't have a degree in computer science. My dad does, but not in web design. So I've had to teach myself WordPress, and I've had to teach myself how to do some short codes and full coding and all this other. And it's overwhelming. But if people are patient with me, I'm hoping that by the end of the year, I'm actually going to have like this really amazing website. But the new version is up, and at least half of it is fully functional. But there's resources. I have, at this point, hundreds, if not thousands, of educational videos talking about all these legal, freedom, constitutional topics, all the briefs and motions and things that I've in my own case, this Allegan County trespassing case, as well as some of the amicus briefs that are not as dry as others, but they're on my website too. I want people to see the law, hear it, read it, know it, and not have to rely on attorneys or judges or whomever to tell you what the law is, because most of them don't know what they're doing. So, at any rate, so Restore Freedom KH, RestoreFreedomKH.com is my website. So if you can probably just Google Restore Freedom, or you can scan the QR codes on any of these, or on my car magnets. I won't think it's creepy if I see you out there later and you're like scanning the QR code in my car. It's totally fine. But yeah, I know I'm kind of skipped around a little bit. There's so much that my brain's trying to explode with all at the same time and stuff. But basically, my job now, starting in January of this year, we started doing a weekly show. And after the first few weeks, I set an actual specific day and time to do it. And it's Restore Freedom Weekly, and we talked about constitutional amendments, different ballots and petitions that will be on the ballot, different bills that are being proposed, several huge U.S. Supreme Court cases have come out in the last couple of months. I've been explaining those, talked about those, different lawsuits that the Michigan governor has been filing. She just can't help herself. All kinds of things. I've been interviewing. I've done interviews with the next Secretary of State of Michigan, the next governor of the state of Michigan, and one of the three Republican AG candidates that we had in Michigan. It's the race now narrowed down to one. But anyway, I interviewed one of the show. We talk about, basically, I want to make sure government and the law and the Constitution are not abstract to people, that they don't. We've been trained, even as an attorney, I generally felt like, I could never take on that kind of case or that kind of case. If you had asked me, 6 years ago or 10 years ago, for sure, well, are you a constitutional attorney? Do you know anything? I would have said, don't talk to me about that. I don't know anything about that. Oh my gosh, like, no one should ever say that. I was a public official, I was a licensed attorney, and I was saying and feeling like I was inadequate to know what the Constitution said. Well, I shouldn't have been practicing law. I mean, quite frankly, at that point, but I was not unique in that regard at all. So, you know, it's been a long haul, but I'm still trying to instill that confidence in everyone. And even, were you giving her a hard time? You know, I almost forgot. Can you stand up for a minute? Emma? So you were reading several of your books. She got a big hiatus on finishing up her second grade year. She spent some time with her adult sisters and with her grandparents and cousins and stuff this summer. And so we're just kind of finishing up the tail end of her second grade year. And one of the books that she was reviewing today was about the Declaration of Independence.
All right.
So what is one thing that you learned today, or reminded yourself of, about the Declaration of Independence?
Some people were dressing as natives. They dumped tea into the ocean.
Oh, okay.
And the king didn't let anybody go on the boat that they were on unless the people paid for the tea.
Okay. So back when, that was before we were the United States and we were just basically run by the King of England. Is that what you're talking about? That's not your favorite part of history though, right?
Maybe that's the only part that I remember of that book.
Oh, well, how about you fast forward a few years to when we wrote the Declaration of Independence and we became our own country and then created the Constitution where all of our God-given liberties are cemented right there and government cannot take those away. Isn't that a better part of history? Do you remember any of the amendments? No? No. What are some of the rights that we've talked about? What are some of the things that happened in Mommy's case? What are some of the rights that they denied me?
Not letting people go into the court.
Yep. Mom's torturing you too much?
What?
Is mom torturing you too much? Okay, you passed for today. Good job. So by the end of the year, what's that?
That's what hurt me for.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. I'm trying to talk at least one of my other kids into it first because they're a little bit closer to that age. But by the end of the year, my hope is to have a constitution book written. It's going to focus, the start will be on the U.S. Of course, the Declaration of Independence will be there, but the U.S., Michigan, and Florida Constitution. There's a lot of similarities. In fact, in my weekly show, I often talk about, okay, well, here's this topic. You know, one day we were talking about substantive due process. What is it? You know, I'm talking about parts of the U.S. Constitution, the Michigan Constitution, and the Florida Constitution. This week, we talked about county level governments. So I was telling people where to find, you know, parts on relating to county governments in the Florida Constitution and the Michigan Constitution, U.S. Constitution. So anyway, so by the end of the year, I'd love to at least have my first draft of this Constitution book. And going to be putting together actual Constitution classes. One's for adults, one's for teenagers, and one's for little people like her. I have a Constitution app. We already have it live, but it's not as smooth as I would like it to be. So I'm actually rewriting that app myself. I didn't write the original one, but I'm rewriting it myself to make it a lot more functioning. Getting our website, all those resources up and running a little bit more readily accessible. You know, just a ton of things that I want to put in the hands of people, tools to be able to do things. But I'm afraid I'm trying to harness myself on saying, starting any topics that I know I could just talk on forever about. So I think what would be better is there a topic, anything I've said, a comment, something that leaves any of you out of question.
Can you explain to them what an amicus brief is?
An amicus brief, thank you, I take for granted some of the things that I know and forget that other people might not know them. An amicus brief is like basically when an attorney comes in, they're not representing an official party to the case, but they're representing a party like Physicians for Informed Consent in that example. Or when I was doing briefs in Michigan in 2020, I was actually filing on behalf as the unofficial spokesperson for all the people in Michigan. Because at that point, I literally had hundreds of thousands of people reaching out to me on a regular basis, asking me questions. Local news stations, or actually statewide news stations, radio, TV, whatever, were interviewing me and asking my opinion about different things. And so I said, at this point, I'm unofficially representing the people of Michigan, and who are not a named party to the lawsuit, but just offering a different perspective, something new to think about with all the law requires the court to do one thing or another. So that's what an amicus brief is.
Also known as a friend of the court brief.
I try not to say that because in Michigan, the friend of the court is the mid-level between before you get to a judge for your custody and parenting time issues.
In Florida, amicus brief is basically considered a friend of the court.
It is everywhere. It's just I talk to way too many Michigan people that would be like, "What does this have to do with custody?" No, it's not friend of the court in that sense. So, are there any other questions? Yeah.
What freedoms do you apply for, and how do you do that?
Generally speaking, all of our God-given liberties, which means everything that's not even written in the Constitution, because of course we have the 9th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I forget what the part in the Florida Constitution is, but the Michigan Constitution is Article 1, Section 23, that we have all the rights given to us by God, and government's job is to secure and protect those rights, even the ones that we don't specify in the Constitution. So those are the ones, that's probably the one part of the U.S. Constitution I talk about the most is the unenumerated rights clause. And how do I do that? One of the biggest things is to really push the concepts, whether it's in my briefs, whether it's, just doing, presentations, whether I'm speaking to a crowd of, 2,000 people or whatever it is. One of the things I try to focus on more and more is the distinction between rights and powers. So how many here have heard of the term states' rights? We've all heard of it, right? States' rights don't exist. It's not a thing. Never should have been talked about as a thing. States don't have rights. In fact, the 10th Amendment doesn't use the word right. It's about powers. The powers that are not delegated, and I'm paraphrasing the middle part here, but the powers that are not delegated to the federal or state governments are reserved to the people. It actually says the powers that are not delegated to the U.S. government or prohibited to it by the state are reserved to the states or to the people, respectively. But in the end, the people have the ultimate control and authority. We have ultimate sovereignty. And, and I know there's a whole Romans 13 thing, and I'd be, glad to go into what I've done many times before on that topic, but what it boils down to is that in our whole structure of government, the authority figure is we the people. And all of those in office, whether the very smallest office in the smallest city or village or township somewhere up to the President of the United States, all of those individuals work for we the people. But no government, I've heard a lot of people, even especially on the conservative side, that argue, for states' rights. So they're super happy about the Dobbs decision because it returned that decision to the state. Spoiler alert, that was the most horrendous decision that ever could have happened because it's not up to states to kill babies. Our Constitution is pretty clear. You cannot be deprived life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And where is the due process for those unborn children? It's not. It's not up to the state. And so, at any rate, a lot of people have pointed to the 10th Amendment. Scholars and justices of the Supreme Court, everybody has pointed to the 10th Amendment throughout the last, 200 years, saying, it's a states' rights thing. There are no rights for states. People individuals, we are given liberty by God. We have rights. So that's, I guess, well, I'm an attorney, so you expected a long answer, I'm assuming. But that's going to be one of the best ways to start and to answer how I fight for rights, is to start with some of those basic concepts. We don't get our rights from government. We get our rights from God. Government doesn't have any rights, but any powers or authority it does have, it gets from us. So if it's not in the U.S. Constitution, if it's not in the state constitution, government can't do it, period. All the alphabet soup, administrative agencies, every last one is totally unconstitutional. Case law, totally unconstitutional. You know, case precedent can serve some purpose in a variety of ways, but not the way that it's used now. Like it's case law, and that's the epitome.
Could you start over and go through that again?
Yeah, I could, but I don't want to put you to sleep. I'm sure it was hardly exciting the first time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just always remember, the judiciary does not make law. And that is right in our Constitution.
Yep.
So when you hear the idea that the judiciary case law, they don't make law.
And you know what's funny is that in some of the cases, even the case, cases that have been involving the governor and the EOs and what I was doing, a lot of the attorneys, even the ones on the good side, were talking about, well, the separation of powers in terms of it being a doctrine. Okay, great. Maybe it's a doctrine in the U.S. Constitution, but in many state constitutions, including Michigan, there is specific wording, literally separation of powers. Those words are written into the Michigan State Constitution. I think it's Article 3, Section 2. I don't know how you can call it a doctrine at that point. It's like, no, don't make this complicated. It is what it is, and we're bound by it. So, something I found interesting, and I haven't seen if there's haven't studied the Florida Constitution or all of Florida laws enough to know for sure if there's something maybe I overlooked or missed, but in the Michigan Constitution, it's actually not even in the Constitution, there's a state law that applies every single person who works for government, volunteers, maybe, once a year cleans out the elementary school gym in his local neighborhood or whatever, right? All the way up to, paid people, whatever. Every single person that has a role for government has to take a constitutional oath. Every single person. The Florida Constitution, and as far as I've seen on Florida law, it's not set up the same way here, which is shocking to me. The Florida State Constitution talks about state and county level officials, but not local officials. But the saving grace on this, I think, is this. And this, I've never been more excited in a whatever it's called down here, DMV, Secretary of State, whatever, where you go to get your driver's license. I've never been more excited to wait in a line and finally get up there than I was when I moved down here last summer. So, I'm waiting in a line like I've never seen in an office like that in any of the states I've lived in. And finally I get up there and it's my turn and we're going through things and she was being like super patient as best she could be. And you sign a bunch of stuff on a little like credit card type of machine. You're signing your life away and you're confirming your information. And then I'm like, wait, what is this? And I took a picture of it because it's the oath. It's written into the Constitution. You have to take an oath just to register to vote in Florida. Now that is pretty darn cool. And so if you are an elected official at any level, well, you kind of have to start by being an eligible, voter in the state. Well, you've already taken the oath. So, technically, everybody is covered here with that oath. But I thought that's amazing to me that every person who votes is taking that oath.
And yeah, municipal, they have to take the oath, and charter officers.
But I haven't found where that's actually laid out. That's the problem.
It's in just about every city's charter.
But it shouldn't just be on a local level. It should be required statewide. Like you can't hold office. That's the one thing Michigan has done right that Florida has done wrong. You shouldn't hold any office anywhere in the whole state if you can't swear an oath to the U.S. and Florida Constitution. I don't know, that's just me.
Oh, I don't disagree. But I don't disagree with you.
What's the what's the purpose of doing the oath and then you screw up everything in Chicago anyway?
So one of the things my constitutional amendment did in Michigan was if you, you were screwing over your oath, you were violating people's rights, you were not even necessarily like doing something where the intent and the result is to, deny somebody of one of the enumerated rights. It could just be something that's just done, in a more general sense without any specific individual receiving harm, basically. But if you're doing something that violates the Constitution in any way, now, well, everybody's violating. Every government official, like 99% of them, is violating our oath in some way. Even
I was
DeSantis.
about to say that.
Some of the stuff that DeSantis does, I'm like, dude, I mean, you're really good and the country loves you, but like, come on, man. No, that shouldn't be a thing. You shouldn't have signed that bill, or you shouldn't have done this, or come on. Trump did it. There were things that Trump was doing when he was in office, and I was like, come on, you can't do that. But then there's things that obviously he had the power to do that there's a lot more that either one of them could do, or anybody in office. But anyway, it's my constitutional amendment would have changed the Michigan state constitution to give teeth, to give, first of all, anybody standing, to bring any government official in for violating an oath. And they didn't have to be a direct, like you have such this huge burden just to show that you have standing to bring a lawsuit these days. It eliminated that need. And it had stiff penalties so that if you were caught, if you were, of course, you get your due process as a public official, flogged, for no reason. But if you were found guilty of having violated the Constitution, at least intentionally, I don't remember exactly how I worded put the word in there, but it was you were immediately removed from your office the first time. But if you did it a second time in some way, you're in another office or whatever, right? That you would face significant jail time and significant personal penalties that, like the government office itself you were in doesn't pay for it. If you work for the city's not going to pay for that. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. It's a personal thing. And that's not a civil suit. That's through the criminal justice system. So the state has to bear that burden, that expense, those resources in holding its wrongdoers accountable. I want to see that happen everywhere. In fact, I was confident God was going to allow us to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. And we were already talking about ways that we could take that template and bring it to every other state in the country.
Especially Washington.
Well, hold on now. I said every other state, and although they think they're a state and they think they should be,
It's the city, Maryland. Maryland.
Yeah. So, but yes, everywhere. We wanted to, Emma, do not working. Keep your head out of the way. They need to be able to get back and forth. Scooch your little body. Thank you. So anyway, there's got to be some other topic or question or anything.
What is the strategy for getting around judicial doctrine? Or like, say, qualified immunity, for instance. That's a good one, because here they made this out, they basically out of thin air. They came up, and it's not the only doctrine, it's just one on the top of my head. But getting around these judicial doctrines to have standing.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned immunity, because the one that comes to my mind is how people have talked about the 11th Amendment as, you can't, it's state immunity, you can't sue state. That's not what it says. Literally, that's not what the language of a fairly simple amendment says. So I know before my career is over, I'm going to be upsetting the apple cart, so to speak, on that topic, because I don't care who they were or how long they were a Supreme Court justice, or if they served as president, or if it was, George Washington, Abe Lincoln, and Thomas Jefferson themselves that are fighting me on this. I don't care. The language of the Constitution is our contract, it's how we gave them permission to do anything on our behalf. So we can't add in a bunch of words. Certainly if a government does you wrong, just as any other party, you should have a way to, you know, hold them accountable, to get reparations, to be whole again. So at any rate, as far as how you get around it, well, first of all, I mean, there's so many ways. So on Wednesdays, I do a Wednesday way to get involved challenge. I like alliteration, I'm kind of a nerd. But in fact, I was hoping there were more W's I could have put in that if I ran out. But it's every Wednesday, I give at least one, if not 2 or 3 ways that it's, you know, fairly simple that you can do something to get involved. And one of the things is, you know, supporting your local candidate. So finding out who's on your upcoming ballot. In fact, we need to do that because we haven't, you know, we don't know anything, how to find any of that stuff around here. So anyway, I need to do that for us, or we need to do that for us. But finding out who's on the local ballot, you know, or your upcoming ballot, which people, which positions, if there's any petitions or, you know, initiatives on there, you know, what do you want to support and not support on all races, but, you know, local on all the way up. And several of my friends who were part of the Restore Freedom team at one point and then have created their own thing, Ottawa Impact. You guys should Google that. It's amazing. They focus on literally Ottawa County in Michigan, which is where we were living. And they are taking the county by storm. They have, out of the 11 county commissioners, they have 9 challengers, you know, 1 for each of 9 of those spots. And they got right to life to reverse their rubber stamp endorsements of the incumbents because of all of the crazy, you know, crap they've been peddling and pushing onto our young people and our families and you know, partnerships with Planned Parenthood and all kinds of other things. And then not only that, but well, Right to Life initially said, well, we're not, you know, we're just halting all endorsements. No, they ended up going full circle and endorsing these challengers that are Ottawa Impact endorsed people. What they're doing is so powerful in a lot of different ways. And Ottawa County is one of the leading counties in West Michigan where, you know, they look to what happens in Ottawa County to determine, you know, who's going to win the presidency or, you know, statewide races or whatever. So it takes a lot of work, but you can, you know, we will undo all the garbage that's out there. All the bad, you know, judicial decisions, all the bad legislation. We just need to get everyday people to stand up and say enough is enough and do something. So yeah, I mean, by the time she's 18, she's gonna be locked and loaded, ready to go in this freedom fight. That's right. All right. Any last questions or anything? I mean, I could talk to you for like 30 hours straight, I'm sure, but I also don't want to put anybody to sleep.
30 hours.
Well, that's why I was gonna sit down, but well, I appreciate I appreciate you guys having me. Oh yeah.
Yes, you touched on something. I was wondering about and Mr. Sanders. What bills they passed that were unconstitutional? If you just give me like an example of Mr. Trump and Mr. DeSantis, if it's possible. Just so I have some, because I have people who are maybe of another party, and they're always telling me that Trump is unconstitutional. And I was wondering if you give me an example of the DeSantis or Trump.
Certainly in 2020, I could have told you off the top of my head several things.
I just want.
Yeah, I can't. I mean,
I'll give you one right now.
They shut down, they both, he shut down the state originally. I love DeSantis. But at the beginning of COVID, he was right along with everybody else.
When Trump said, take the guns first and due process later.
What are we talking about?
When he was talking, that was after the Margaret Douglas shooting, whatever. Take the guns first and due process later. That's about as unconstitutional as you can get.
okay, how about this?
Okay.
Fauci. The fact that he at all gave that man time of day, never for a second should he have let any of that happen. When he was still president, he could have put an end to all the mandates nationwide by not having the propaganda be pushed out every single second of every single day. Yes. I mean, and the CDC and, National Institute of Health and all that other, none of those acronyms should be doing anything. They legally and they constitutionally have no authority to issue mandates, and yet we're following that.
Donald Trump started that as president, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, I mean, and some of the things,
So that would be something unconstitutional.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and, shoot, when you said something, it made me think of a different thing so this, what was it? I did a video on it. It was, the Saturday Night Live skit, they were calling it, the Do Not Say Gay bill, that Disney was fighting against and all that. You guys all know that.
Governor DeSantis, that he did recently.
What's
Is that
that?
what you were referring to?
Yeah, so this bill he passed,
Sorry, hard hearing.
the one they named Do Not Say It, Don't Say It.
But, well, yeah, and it doesn't say that in the language of the law. The sad thing is, now, I pretty much know the answer, but how many of you read that actual bill that passed, the actual language?
I read some of it because I had to fight with people at school about it.
It's crap. It does not do near what it should.
It should have went
Because-
farther. In the
I mean,
80s,
parents
in
have
the 80s,
ultimate
too.
control and authority over their children's education, period. No teacher should ever override anything, period. Until you have proven in a court of law, with our life, liberty, and due process, our life, liberty, and property cannot be stripped away from us without that due process. How can schools or counselors, it has so many carve outs, and then, what was it, like after 5th grade, and they can do basically whatever they want.
Third grade. Third grade.
You're all
third grade.
In my opinion, we should.
But it was written because it is going on.
That I'm school.
And it was a way to combat it because it is going on. And whether or not you say it shouldn't be, of course it shouldn't be, but this was a way for him to fight back against what has been already taking place.
In a teeny tiny way.
Yes.
It's one of those things that they do, all politicians do this. Well, I'd rather, compromise and get this because it's better than getting nothing. And the thing is, the conservative side, the side for freedom and liberty, has always been the one compromising. Where has the left compromised? No, enough. And I'm a mediator. I say this as a true person that tries to find common ground. You don't compromise on the Constitution. You don't compromise on what the rule of law is. You don't compromise on God-given liberties, ever. So,
So the alternative is what? Send someone in and arrest these people who are doing that. And
sure.
Right, that's not gonna happen. That doesn't happen.
But he could, and he should.
Right. But it wouldn't, and it won't.
Well, I tell you what, if somebody ever ticks me off enough, I'll run for governor, and then all bets are off, so they better all run for the
Well, it's
hills.
just like he said that abortion, and he signed that bill about where you couldn't have an abortion after 15 weeks. Personally, I wish he had signed it and said no, period, none,
Yeah,
no matter when.
yeah.
A lot of states have totally banned abortion.
Well,
And
yeah,
I
that's,
would love to see that happen here.
Do we have 15 weeks? I thought it,
15
I thought it
weeks.
wasn't,
I think
okay,
it's 15 minutes.
because I thought the guy who's running Simpson.
No, trust
messed
me,
that up
I'm
too.
up on it.
Okay,
yeah, there's so many, it's,
I think he was trying to go further, but that Wilton
I wish he
Simpson
had.
is somebody who got in the way of that.
Yeah,
along
I
with the
think
red
that
flag
Stannis
laws.
himself would do it. I
Yeah.
think he's pro-life.
well, and think about it this way, look at all the gun laws that have passed with the Republican-led legislature in Michigan and in Florida.
That's
And the
Wilton
things that-
Simpson, 2018, he brought that thing up, and now DeSantis stacked him for whatever he's running for.
In agriculture.
Yeah, I'm voting for the other guy,
And
Sean.
that
I already
guy,
voted,
he
I
has
already
shut
voted.
down everything that the Kansas tried to do.
Yes, he has.
Yeah,
DeSantis wanted
backing it.
constitutional
Yeah.
carry. He shut that down, and then what does DeSantis turn around and
And
endorse
endorses
it?
him. It makes no sense.
And here's the
They
thing,
know
this
that.
is what, and I don't mean to pick on DeSantis, I'm not one of those people that just is always gonna complain and
No,
anybody
no,
knows
no,
that. But if, any one of the state reps or senators or, DeSantis himself, whatever, any sheriff, any law enforcement officer, any prosecutor should stand up and go, I'm confused, you want a law about constitutional carry? That's strange, because I don't think the Constitution allows all the laws that are on the books about, infringing upon your Second Amendment guaranteed rights to defend yourself. So, as far as I could tell, you can just do, you you can't harm other people, you can, whatever, right? There's common sense things.
Right.
Murder is not legal, but owning a gun
But
and
if your
using it in
baby
self-defense.
in the womb,
It's totally
legal.
fine to kill people as long
Yeah,
as they're
that
unborn.
just gets me,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But you know what I mean? So
Get
there's
off on
things,
that.
that's what, the Michigan legislature, they're all a bunch of horrible.
And our sheriff here is the #1 abuser of the red flag walls in the state. Yeah.
What-
Well, he hasn't met me yet.
Trust me, if you want to be dragged through the mud on social media, go meet him. 'Cause that's what he'll do. That's what he does.
Only if he has.
I don't have dirt. Anybody can know anything.
Oh, it doesn't
about me.
matter. He'll make it up. He'll just make up stuff when it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they are very creative.
Plenty
of
I know a
people
guy
right here in
who's
this room. who's
special
done
forces.
it.
He was special forces. I mean,
He was?
military, or Vietnam and all
Are
that.
you, I'm
I know a man who was,
Oh, okay.
and he got in an argument with his neighbor. And they got physical and they knocked the guy out. And also they've been drinking, and the police were called. Well, they arrested him, but they confiscated his gun. They took his gun because he can't have his gun.
How many of you have heard of Ryan Kelly?
Yeah, he's the guy up in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
That was,
He's a friend of mine. He was he's the one of the 5 remaining Republican candidates for the governor spot in Michigan. And Tuesday is the primary, so pray please between now and Tuesday. Wow, that sounds really exciting. It wants to get me. Maybe I could stand in the corner. Yeah, go. In my eye, but I'll be able to. Anyway, it's he has these January 6th charges pending against him, and amongst 17 billion other things that are wrong. Part of his bond conditions are that his guns were confiscated, and I'm like, I thought here we were innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Whatever happened to that?
So
you're on the wrong side of the aisle.
There's
There's
4
two
people in
systems.
jail right now up
Two
there.
systems of law.
I mean, they had no justice at all.
yeah,
But thieves can go through the
So
store and pack up
speaking
and
of
keep going.
not
They don't get
guilty,
stopped.
until proven. How does Michigan handle, because I know you're probably not familiar with Florida, so we'll go with Michigan. Maybe they don't have this problem, but Florida does have this problem. If you have not even been charged with the crime and you Google on the clerk of court your name, it shows as if you had been. So you can't really differentiate off the main screen whether the person had just been accused or formally charged and seen a judge, or they even assign a judge. Like you've never been in front of, there's a judge's name. They give you a case number that doesn't exist because there was never a case. So does Michigan have that problem, or is that just a Florida thing?
I guess I can't speak to that. I have not seen that, but that's definitely not constitutional.
I went to federal court against Volusia County Sheriff's Office, the city of Deltona, the county of Volusia, individuals specifically because they went under the color of law or was malicious with their intent. Of course, things were settled or whatever, but it still remains because that would have been something I needed to fight apparently at the state level, because the state is responsible for that still being there, not so much the sheriff's office but they put it there. You know what I'm saying? So I don't understand how they're not responsible, but so there's still some gray area. That's some confusing, and I went as high up as I've been able to go to determine like how to fix that, and it's basically at the law level. It has to be changed in the laws. I don't know how that law can exist that can put that on you.
No, not constitutionally. No, and it's not. You don't have to chase down 57 government agencies to figure out how to have your rights restored back to what God gave you in the first place.
So my question is, why is it so hard not only to get representation for something like that, but to get a judge, to get it in front of the proper judge? I'll put it that way, because it's a lot of, it's not mine.
Yeah. Well, the unfortunate thing is, first of all, when we're in law school, and obviously judges start as lawyers, so all judges, all lawyers going to law school. Obviously, I didn't go to every single law school, but I went to one, an ABA accredited law school at that. So it's not like, you know, a crackerjack box. I found my Juris Doctorate, but like all other judges and lawyers and, you know, whomever, we're not really taught the Constitution as, you know, the basis of everything. When we're in law school, we're taught constitutional law, which means case law. You study the Constitution by just talking about what the judges have done throughout the years. That's so backwards. We should be learning the Constitution and starting there and often ending there. I mean, if there truly is some sort of confusion or ambiguity or something of that nature, that's where, yeah, okay, I can see how case precedent can help, because you have to have some consistency from one case to another. And, you know, if we're truly just at a loss of how something applies, okay. But it's finding an attorney. So I get people all the time that want me, you know, call me, hey, can you represent me on XYZ? I mean, people all over the country, not just Michigan.
I mean, I camped on the doorstep. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I was at their doorstep at 6 a.m.
Yep.
Right there in Daytona, you know? Because they were known for like,
yeah,
the fight or whatever. And
yep.
That was a question I wanted to ask you.
I was better off on my own.
For people who have issues, this is the problem. Is there like a network of attorneys?
Nope.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure is.
Who will take on these cases? You really have no recourse.
None.
No,
None.
you don't. You may know the law, you may do this, but you know, it's like David fighting Goliath. And is there any network or somebody who's moving to start these networks?
In
I mean, it even goes all the way as far
for the
as.
people who are wrong to really need that resource.
Not here in Volusia.
No, there's
And
not even Volusia County.
And
Like,
the problem in Volusia County is you have such a good old boy network between RJ,
Right.
Chitwood,
It's everywhere.
and that's where the problem is. It really lies with RJ and Chitwood. Now, if we can get Don Dempsey
Yeah.
in the state attorney's office and we can get rid of Chitwood, and I don't care if it's by lightning strike or voting him out, I prefer a lightning strike. We can get rid of him. That's where we change things.
but I mean, I spent 3 years before I ended up filing it myself at the state to get it moved to federal. And it was like pulling teeth. I mean, I had this sheriff, Chitwood, on record admitting to the manipulation of his deputies by the city government.
But he doesn't care because there's nothing.
Right. So that was the thing. There was no, well, we're gonna fix that. You're telling me you have an office that could be manipulated, that's worrisome. So, you know, it didn't matter, 3 years of any attorney you can think of. And I'm like, I did all the work. I have every admission. I have every, we're gonna settle it for this kind of thing. And not one attorney's like, well, it's very complex. Well, no shit. Like, constitutional law is complex, but it's here in black and white. And if I can see it and I can sit down and learn how to put together the lawsuit that says, okay, well, you have to have your cause. And if I can take each constitutional violation and spell out where it fell, I didn't understand why the attorney couldn't do
Is
it.
there reluctance? Do they just don't want to take time?
A lot of them
money?
said it was, well, you know, we still have to work around here.
We don't even have a.
What is that hope for me?
I have a question.
If you have-
There's none. It's even, oh, you know, go to the Florida bar and get it. Even then, I called everyone in Florida bars, like, these people are, no, they don't.
We found an attorney.
I have friends.
Call for
So I would love to be the lead of an organization, you know, that has a whole network of people in every state, you know, like PIs and sheriffs and prosecuting attorneys and you know, whatever, private attorney.
Like, I was willing to put in my
Stuff.
work, I was willing to do just as much,
You gonna
to
start
stand up
this
there
year?
and fight it.
Did you hear all the other things I want to
But
try
you
to
kinda
accomplish
gotta-
before December?
I
But
just-
I know
have that
that all
knowledge.
attorneys working in each state. My
Excuse me
work
for
is
just 1 minute, guys. Can I get a motion to adjourn? We are officially adjourned.
My motion.
Okay, we are officially adjourned and we're gonna go ahead and do the 50-50 now. And then we can continue talking.
Totally understandable.
motion.
Yeah, I didn't even know what time it
We have a
was.
sheet of paper in front of us.
You made the motion.
300 hours.
Chris made the motion.
Go 300 hours.
He made, I seconded it, he made the motion.